She cheated with my best friend behind my back, then secretly forged my signature to sell our house for $350, $0. Now he's trying to sue me for half the profits, claiming I abandoned my family. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be a lying, cheating bitch. Honestly, the whole thing started with what I thought was just typical marriage issues, little fights, some cold shoulders, you know how it goes. But then suddenly everything changed. One day I just had this gut feeling that something was off, like a knot forming in my stomach that I couldn't ignore. And when I finally looked into it, what I found was the kind of betrayal that hits you like a freight train. Lisa and I had been together for over 10 years. We got married right after college, had 2 kids, a nice house, the works. I worked hard as an accountant. She stayed home with the kids for a while, then got a part-time job at a boutique downtown. She was always a bit bitchy, kind of a diva, but I loved her. Or at least I thought I did. She was controlling about money, always spending more than we could afford, but I figured it was just her way of handling stress. We had a comfortable life, or so I thought. It all started about 3 months ago. Lisa began acting strange, distracted, secretive, always on her phone. I'd catch her typing late at night, then quickly hide the screen when I entered the room. She'd brush it off, say she was texting her sister or scrolling through Facebook. I didn't press her too hard because I didn't want to be that guy. Besides, I trusted her, or at least I thought I did. But then I noticed small things that didn't add up. She'd come home late from work, claiming she had to stay for an extra meeting, but I'd find her car parked down the street, or her phone records showed calls to a number I didn't recognize. I started snooping, nothing malicious, just enough to satisfy my curiosity. And that's when I found the messages. Flirty, intimate texts from her, with someone named Jake. The way she described him, it was clear they'd been screwing around for at least a few weeks. I remember the exact moment I saw the texts. I was in the garage rummaging for a screw when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw her messages, hot, suggestive, talking about meeting up after work, about how Jake makes me feel alive again. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was she cheating on me with my best friend Tom? The thought made my blood boil. I decided to follow her one evening. I didn't want to confront her blindly. I parked my car down the street, watched her walk out of the house at 8 p.m. and followed her at a distance. She went into a fancy hotel downtown, one I knew was expensive. I waited outside, heart pounding, and saw her sneak in with a guy who looked a lot like Jake. They stayed for over an hour. When she came out, she looked flushed, happy, like she just had the best sex of her life. That was the moment I knew for sure. My wife had been cheating on me with my best friend, and she'd lied to my face about everything. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to her lies, her betrayal, the way she'd been so bitchy and dismissive lately, all to hide this secret. I felt humiliated, angry, betrayed, like I'd been punched in the stomach and left to bleed out. How could she do this? How could she lie to me for months? And Tom, my best friend, how could he do this to me? It was like the ground had shifted beneath my feet, and I had no choice but to face the truth. The next morning I woke up with a pounding headache and a mind that refused to stop spinning. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it blindly. I needed proof, something concrete. So I started digging deeper, going through her phone, her emails, anything that could give me more clarity. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. How could she have lied so easily? How could she betray everything we built together for some quick sex and a thrill? I found more messages, more evidence. She'd been sneaking around for months, and the worst part was, she'd lied to me every step of the way. She told me she was working late, going out with friends, doing normal wife stuff, while behind my back she was screwing my best friend. I also uncovered that she had secretly forged my signature on a few documents, an astonishing revelation, and sold our house without my knowledge for $350, $0. That was a punch to the gut I didn't see coming. She'd lied, manipulated, and now she was trying to cash in on my trust. The house. Our house. Our family home, where I had raised my kids, where I had built a life, she had secretly sold it. The thought made me feel sick. I had no idea she'd been planning this behind my back. I felt like a fool. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? How did I not see her slipping away bit by bit? I'd always been loyal, tried to keep things smooth, but she'd been plotting her escape with Tom all along, using me like a fool. I decided I couldn't let her get away with this. Not without a fight. I started planning my next move. First, I needed to confront her face to face. I wanted answers, and I wanted to make her pay for what she'd done. I arranged to meet her that evening at a local. She was bitchy right from the start, trying to brush me off, pretending nothing was wrong. She said I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that she loved me and the kids. She called me possessive and jealous, but I knew better. I knew she'd been cheating, lying, forging documents, all behind my back. When I confronted her, her reaction was typical. She everything at first, then started spinning wild excuses. She said Jake was just a friend, that I was paranoid, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. She told me he was just a guy she'd met at work and they'd never had sex, just some flirty messages. She even tried to turn the tables, saying I was just insecure and jealous. That was rich coming from her. I'd seen the messages, the hotel receipts, the forged signatures. I knew her lies were thin. The emotional impact was staggering. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I was angry, yes, but also deeply hurt. I had trusted her. I had been faithful, supportive, and yet she'd been screwing around with my best friend, lying to my face every step of the way. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind. The betrayal cut so deep I almost couldn't breathe. I was furious that she'd taken my trust and shattered it for some meaningless sex and a quick buck. But underneath that rage, there was a growing sense of sadness, like I'd lost the person I thought I knew, the person I loved. I left that meeting more resolved than ever. I knew I couldn't stay in this relationship, not after everything I found out. I felt a strange mix of relief and despair. Relief that I finally knew the truth, and despair because I realized I'd been by someone I trusted completely. I sat in my car for a while, just staring at the steering wheel, trying to process everything. I knew I had to act fast. There were legal issues with the house, the forged signatures, the money she'd taken, and I couldn't let her get away with it. I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine and to make her face the consequences of her actions. After I left, though I couldn't sit still. My mind was racing, spinning through every detail I'd uncovered and every emotion I was trying to suppress. I knew I had to act quickly. She'd already sold the house, forged my signature, and was probably planning to disappear with the money. I couldn't let that happen. I needed legal help. I needed to protect myself, and most of all, I needed to figure out how to turn this betrayal into my revenge. The first step was to get a lawyer. I found a guy named Mark who specialized in real estate fraud and family law. I laid everything out, her affair with Tom, the forged signature, the sale of the house for $350, $0. Mark was stunned, but he took my case seriously. He told me I had a strong claim, especially with the forged documents. He also warned me about the legal mess I was getting into, but I was ready for war. I wanted to make her pay for what she'd done. While waiting for legal advice, I started digging into her finances. I found out she'd been secretly saving money from her part-time job, squirreling it away in a separate account. She'd been planning her escape for months, no doubt. I also discovered she'd been trying to hide her affair with Tom from me, using burner phones and secret emails. The level of deception was staggering. It made me realize she'd been planning to leave me for a long time, probably even before I suspected anything. Meanwhile, I started to think about how I could leverage her betrayal to get back at her. I wasn't just looking for legal justice. I wanted to make her suffer. I knew she'd been bitchy, manipulative, and full of lies, but I also knew her weakness: money. She loved to spend, to flaunt her lifestyle, to show off her designer clothes and fancy dinners. That's when I decided to take control of the situation in my own way. I reached out to Tom, the guy she'd been cheating with. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I just told him I knew everything, that I had proof of their affair, and that I was coming for him too. I wanted him to know I wasn't going to let this slide. I wasn't just going to divorce her. I was going to destroy her financial stability, her reputation, everything she cared about. I planned to make her regret ever crossing me. In the meantime, I also started to gather evidence against her for the legal case. I took screenshots of the texts, saved her emails, and even hired a private investigator to follow her around. I wanted to be sure I had everything I needed to prove her deceit in court. I was furious, but I also knew I had to be smart. I couldn't just lash out blindly. I needed to control the situation to turn her lies back on her. As I watched her try to cover her tracks, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and disgust. The woman I'd trusted for years had turned into a manipulative, deceitful stranger. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. But I was also determined. This was my life, and I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she'd stolen, from my house, from my trust, from my dignity. I was ready to fight, and I knew it was only the beginning. The legal process moved faster than I expected, probably because I was relentless. Mark filed the paperwork to freeze her accounts, challenge the sale of our house, and invalidate the forged signatures. I made sure every piece of evidence I had, texts, emails, receipts, was organized, detailed, and ready to be used. I knew Lisa would try to spin her story, lie her way out of it, but I wasn't going to let her. I had enough proof to bury her lies. Meanwhile, I started to execute my plan for revenge. I knew she loved her money and her status, so I decided to hit her where it hurt most, her pride and her financial stability. I told her I was filing for divorce, and I made it clear I was going after every penny she'd secretly saved, every asset she'd hidden, and the profits from the house sale. That bought me a few days of her panicking, and I used that time to gather even more dirt. One night, I showed up at her favorite boutique with my lawyer. I pretended to be interested in buying something expensive, just to see her reaction. She was there trying to keep her cool, but her eyes darted nervously when she saw me walk in. I didn't say a word, just let her sweat. That was enough to remind her I was onto her, that I was serious. I also hired a private investigator to dig into her bank accounts and find out exactly how much she'd been hiding. Turns out she'd squirreled away over $50, $0 in a separate account. I was furious that she'd been so sneaky, but also relieved that I'd caught her. The confrontation with her was inevitable. I called her into the house one evening, told her I knew everything about the affair, the forged signatures, the money, everything. She looked stunned at first, then started to blabber her usual lies. She said I was overreacting, that it was just sex with Tom, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that she was just trying to find herself again. I cut her off and told her I had all the proof I needed. I told her she was a manipulative, selfish bitch who had played me for years. Her face turned red, her usual bitchy attitude slipping into real fear. That was the moment I knew I'd won the upper hand. But I didn't stop there. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal. I told her I was going to take her to court, challenge the house sale, and sue her for every penny she'd stolen or hidden. I also warned her that I was going to expose her affair with Tom publicly if she didn't settle quietly. Her reaction was to scream, call me a jealous psycho, and accuse me of ruining her life. That only made me more determined. I knew her pride was fragile and I planned to break it. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I was in a war I couldn't escape from. I was angry at her, yes, but also deeply disappointed. The woman I loved, the woman I married, had turned out to be a manipulative liar, a thief, and a cheat. Every day was a sometimes I'd wake up feeling victorious, other times drowning in despair. But I kept pushing forward, knowing that this was about justice, about reclaiming what was mine, about making her pay for the pain she caused. I realized I couldn't trust anyone anymore, certainly not her, and maybe not even Tom. But I was determined to come out of this stronger. I started to plan my next moves carefully, knowing that this fight wasn't over yet. I'd take her to court, expose her secrets, and make sure she never did this to anyone else again. I was angry, but I was also focused. This was my life, and I was going to take it back. The court proceedings were a nightmare, but I was prepared. Mark laid out all the evidence, proof of her affair, forged signatures, the secret sale of our house, the hidden bank accounts. Lisa's face was a mask of anger and desperation, but I knew she was starting to realize she was in way over her head. The judge listened carefully, and I could see the wheels turning as they examined the mountain of proof I'd gathered. Meanwhile, Lisa's lies started unraveling. She tried to claim she had emotional issues, that she was just looking for happiness, that she never meant to hurt me. But her words rang hollow next to the cold, hard evidence. The judge didn't buy her excuses. It was clear she'd committed serious financial misconduct, selling our house without my consent, forging my signature, hiding assets, and sleeping around with Tom. The court ordered an immediate freeze on her assets, including the money she'd hidden, and appointed a forensic accountant to evaluate the true value of everything. She tried to hide. That's when I learned she'd been planning to leave me entirely. She'd already started packing, preparing to vanish with her new lover. I found out that she'd bought a one-way ticket to a different state, trying to hide her tracks. But I beat her to it. I had the tickets canceled, and I made sure she couldn't escape with a single dollar. The court also ordered her to pay back the profits from the house, which I found was worth about $300, $0 after expenses. She tried to screw me over, but I was one step ahead. The real shock came when the court awarded me full custody of the kids. Lisa had been neglectful and manipulative, always pushing her own agenda, but now the judge saw through her act. I was stunned, but I knew it was necessary. My children deserved stability, and I was determined to give it to them. Lisa's bitchy attitude and lies had finally caught up with her. She was starting to realize she'd lost everything. Throughout all this, I felt a strange mixture of relief and rage. Relief that I'd finally taken control, and rage that I'd been so blind for. So long, I trusted her, believed in her, and she'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. But I also knew I was stronger now. I turned the tables on her, exposed her lies, and made her pay a price she'd never forget. In the end, I decided to cut all ties. I moved out of the house with the kids, started fresh, and cut her out of my life completely. I knew she'd try to come back, try to manipulate her way into my good graces, but I was done. The betrayal had broken something inside me, but it also made me realize I deserved better. I learned that trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to mend. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to get justice, especially when someone like her refuses to play fair. Looking back, I realized that this whole experience changed me. I'm more cautious now, more guarded, but also more aware of what true betrayal looks like. I want to warn others. Trust your gut, keep your eyes open, and don't let anyone manipulate or lie to you. Because if you don't fight back, they'll keep taking your money, your happiness, your life. And in the end, you might be left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. Now, looking back, I honestly don't know how I got through it. The whole thing felt like some twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I lost my house, my trust, my peace of mind, and even my sense of stability for a while. But I also gained something: clarity. I learned that people are capable of incredible deception when they think they can get away with it, and that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail just to get your life back. The betrayal cut deep, but I refuse to let it define me. I've come to see that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your dignity after someone has tried to strip it away. I made sure she paid for her lies, her manipulation, and her greed. I took everything she tried to steal from me, my home, my money, my reputation, and I turned it into a lesson. I've since started over, focusing on rebuilding my life and my relationship with my kids. They're the only reason I kept going through all the chaos. Watching them grow and be happy has been the only real silver lining in all this mess. As for Lisa, I don't know where she is now, and honestly, I don't care. She's the past. The person I am today is stronger, wiser, and more cautious because of what I went through. If I could give any advice to anyone reading this, it's this: trust your instincts. When something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore the warning signs, no matter how much you want to believe in people. And if you find yourself betrayed, don't be afraid to fight for what's right, no matter how dirty the fight gets. Sometimes that's the only way to get justice. Most importantly, don't let betrayal turn you into someone bitter. Use it as a lesson. Trust is fragile, but it can also be rebuilt, and sometimes the only way forward is to start fresh. I've learned that the hard way. I've learned that revenge isn't just about hurting the other person. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your future. So that's my story. It's been a brutal ride, but I'm still here, still standing. And I hope that if anyone reading this ever finds themselves in a similar situation, they can take something from my experience. Trust yourself, stay strong, and never let anyone take more than they deserve.